We already know what the primitive data types are, but in this video, we will be taking a look at primitive data type classes. Well, some of them. Let's start with the blob class. If we go to the documentation right now, it would look something like this. At the very top, we have the class name and its description. Then there is the namespace that it belongs to. Thereafter, the usage, and finally, the methods that can be used for this data type. We'll click on the toPDF method to know what it has to offer. Here it says it creates a binary object out of a given string, encoding it as a PDF file. Then there is the signature on how it's declared. The parameters section defines the number of required parameters with their data types that can be passed to the method. Here the toPDF method requires a single parameter of type string. This method will return the value of type blob. Finally, we have an example that will help us understand on how it can be implemented. Okay, so let's look at a few examples of the blob class, such as toPDF that accepts a stringToConvert parameter and a toString method. toPDF method, as we know, is used to generate a PDF file that has some text in it. For example, we want to store a file as an attachment to an account. So we create an account and then use the attachment class to generate its new instance. We assign the parent ID to which the attachment needs to be linked. For us, it's the account ID. Then we name the attachment with the extension of .pdf and use the toPDF method of the blob class and pass a string as a parameter. What will happen is that the toPDF method will convert the string to binary. Ultimately, we insert the attachment. In contrast, the toString method is used to convert a binary code to a string. For example, we have the binary data that contains the value of a string, which can only be understood by a machine. But to convert into a legible string, we use the toString method on the blob variable and get the output as string. Number 2. Boolean class in Apex. We will go through the valueOf method that accepts either a string or a field value. The former is to be used when we want to convert a simple true or false string value to Boolean. For example, we have two string variables that holds true and false. Now to convert them into the actual Boolean values, we use the valueOf method of the Boolean class and pass the string values. But what would happen if we pass a string that cannot be converted into Boolean? Then the outcome is always a false value. Now let's assume we have a field on account called isPremium. This field could either be managed as a text field that holds true or false values as a string, or a checkbox field which is true if it's checked, else false. The checkbox field by default behaves and returns a Boolean value. So let's just pretend the field is set up as a text data type. Because the text data type returns values as string, we use the valueOf method and pass the account's isPremium field as the parameter, which finally gets converted into a Boolean. Number 3. Decimal class in Apex. We will go through methods such as intValue, precision, scale, and valueOf method that accepts a string that needs to be converted into decimal. intValue is used to convert a decimal value into an integer by getting the values before the decimal point. For instance, here we have a random value of 3.99. To get the integer value, we use the intValue method on the random value variable that leaves us with the output of an integer. Precision can be used to get the count of total digits before and after the decimal point. Let's use the same random value variable and use the precision method on it. We get the counter of 3. Scale, on the other hand, gets the count of total digits after the decimal point. Reusing the same variable, we apply the scale method to it and get the counter result as 2. The valueOf method, as we know, can be used to convert a string to any data type. In this case, a decimal. Let's say we have a variable that holds a value of 3.99 as a string. We can now use the valueOf method of the decimal class and pass the string as the parameter, which results in a decimal value. Number 4 on our list is double class in Apex. For this, we will only discuss the format method. It's basically used to convert a double value to a string, but with a tiny little twist. For instance, after the decimal point, if our digits are greater than 3, the format method will only output 3, no more than that. The way it works is, it uses a rounding mechanism called the half up on the third and the fourth digits of the double value, in which if the value on the right is less than 5, then the value on the left doesn't change. However, if the value on the right is 5 or greater, then the value on the left is incremented by 1. In our case, we have 7 and 9. 9 passes the evaluation of greater than or equal to 5, which means the value on the left, that is 7, gets incremented by 1 and becomes 8. Therefore, 7, 9 becomes 8 in the final outcome. Here in our code, we use the format method on the random value and get the formatted string as the final result. Number 4, the date class. We'll look at methods such as toStartOfWeek, year, addYears, which accepts additionalYear as a parameter, and the monthsBetween method that accepts a second date. Let's assume today is the 18th of February 2022, and we get that in Apex using the today method of the date class. If we were to use the toStartOfWeek method on the current date, we get the date that represents the start date of the current week. However, the date returned depends on the user's locale settings within Salesforce. For US locales, a week starts from Sunday, while for the European locales, it starts from Monday. Additionally, we can get the start date of the month using the toStartOfMonth method of the date class. An instance of a date usually contains a year, a month, and a day. To get the year, we use the year method on the date variable. Likewise, we can use the month and day methods to get the respective component. Next, let's use the instance method to represent our date. Now imagine we want to extend this date by 2 years. To do so, we use the addYears method on our variable and pass 2 as an integer value. The same goes for if we want to extend the date by 3 or even 10 years. Similarly, we could also go backwards by passing a negative value as a parameter. Here we set the date 2 years behind. The addMonths and addDays methods of the date class can be used to manipulate the respective components. monthsBetween method can be used to get the number of months between 2 dates. For example, we have 2 instances of the date data type where we want to identify the month count between 8th of March 2022 and 8th of November 2022. To solve this, we use the monthsBetween method on our March date and pass the November date as the parameter. Finally, we get the output of an integer data type. Number 5, the time class. For this class, we will discuss hour and addHours method that accepts additionalHours as the parameter. Here we have an instance of the current time. A time, as we know, consists of an hour, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. To get the hour component of the time variable, we use the hour method. A similar approach goes for minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. To top it all up, we use the addHours method to decrease or increase the hours of our time variable. Furthermore, we could use the addMinutes, addSeconds, and addMilliseconds methods for the corresponding components. Number 6, and the final topic of this video, the datetime class in Apex. We will understand how to use the date method, the time method, the dayOfYear method, and the isSameDay method that requires a dateToCompare parameter. We already know that the datetime data type is the combination of a date and a time. To be precise, those components can further be subcategorized into year, month, day, hour, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. The date method from the datetime class can be used to get the date. Here's how we use it. We use the date method on the datetime variable that we want to get the date for. Similarly, we use the time method to get the time. Have you ever wondered what's the day count of any given date out of 365 days? Well, there is a way you could figure that out in Apex, and it is by using the dayOfYear method on a given datetime variable. What about comparing 2 dates and finding if those 2 dates are similar? For instance, here we declare a datetime variable for the current date and time using the now method. Then we create a new instance of datetime by passing only the date components, that is the year, the month, and the day, keeping in mind that it auto-sets the time. Now we can use the isSameDay method on the current date time and pass the due date as the parameter. This, as a result, will return a true or false based on if the dates are similar. A simple piece of advice: don't try to remember all the methods for each class. In fact, whenever you are dealing with a specific data type and want to manipulate the values, Google the class for the data type and go through each method and find the one that fits the purpose. Before I leave you guys to yourself, I would like you to practice on what you learned using the following scenarios. Your job is to determine what method of a class can be used and what could be the syntax. This has been Primitive Data Type Classes Part 1. If you found this video helpful, please do like and subscribe. Don't forget to comment your practice answers in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, be safe and take care. Peace.